First light spreads a thin gold line over Elridge Air Force Base. The ramp smells like JP-8 and cold metal. Generators hum in a steady low note that settles in the chest, under the blunt nose of an A-10C Thunderbolt II. Staff Sergeant Avery Reed works with quiet purpose. Hands sure. Eyes steady. Ground safety pins sit where they should. Tagged and visible. Master arm is set to safe and double-checked. AFTA Forms 781A and 781K are verified with neat, tight handwriting, then stowed where any inspector can find them. Tool control is exact. Foam cutouts filled. Counts matched before she starts a careful dry inspection of the GAU. A linkless feed system with no live ammunition anywhere near the bay. She eases open access panels and checks the drum, conveyor path, and transfer unit for smooth movement. Listening for the clean tick of parts that agree with each other. A faint scuff gets a second look. Then a wipe. Then a confirm. Nothing left to chance. Across the line, Colonel Damon Keller walks with a folder and the posture of someone who has flown this jet and remembers how it feels. He reviews maintenance logs, stops a few paces back, and watches the way she wastes nothing. Two young airmen near a cart trade a soft jab about a supply troop, fixing guns, and then go quiet when she does not react. Avery reaches for a wrench. Sleeve sliding just enough to show a raven circling the Roman numeral VI on her forearm. Keller notices, eyes narrowing for a breath, then shifting back to the work. The hum returns to the foreground, steady and low, while the question hangs there for anyone paying attention. Morning starts at 6:10 a.m. on Elridge Air Force Base. Staff Sergeant Avery Reed keys into the bay, walks the line for FOD, and lays out tools and foam cutouts. She checks calibration stickers, counts everything back in. AFTO, Form 244 and the 781 series get clean entries for discrepancies, corrections, and a plan for the shift today. Her 2W1 armament crew owns weapons and the gun. The two A3 crew chiefs handle aircraft systems, forms routing, and power. With ground safety pins installed and master arm set to safe, Avery leads stray voltage checks, then runs a low-rate GAU-8, a linkless feed dry cycle BIT at the arm pad. Tool control stays tight, as counts are verified before and after every step. Chief Master Sergeant Walter Briggs watches from the doorway with a mug that has gone cold. He does not need chatter to read the room. He notes how Avery tracks exits, people, and hazards without looking like she is scanning. The small head turns in timed glances of someone who has felt real risk. He files it away and lets the floor breathe. Late in the day, Keller swings by for a spot check. He reads the log, then pauses as Avery hand aligns a drive coupling inside the linkless conveyor path, using feeler gauges and the checklist. She resets torque, confirms witness marks, and calls out the step numbers with the clipped rhythm of habit. He wonders if that cadence was learned from the seat. 5 years earlier, the ramp glowed a dull blue before sunrise, and the air tasted like JP-8 and metal. Captain Avery Reed sat in Talon 2, an A-10C tucked into a sixth ship that kept voices clean and short. The plan was a low-level ingress to a convoy that did not want to be found, with TGP used to sort targets and saddle tied through a Link 16 gateway to keep everyone on the same page. She felt the cockpit settle into that quiet, where hands and checklists carry the weight. They rolled at 4:30 a.m., formation lights low, taxi lines sliding past like rails. Takeoff felt smooth and ordinary. The kind of ordinary that comes from long hours and a crew that trusts the work. The flight dropped to terrain, radios trimmed to brevity, and the TGP painted shapes in the gray that matched pre-briefed images. Everything clicked in a way that made the world seem narrow and precise. Then the picture bent. Coordinates came back a hair off. Comms cracked into fragments, and the returns on the scope began to wink out one by one until the net felt empty. Her jet took a hard hit that lit caution lights and made the airframe tremble. And a second later, the controls went heavy and untrue. She climbed enough to trade airspeed for a chance, pulled the handles when the fire bell would not shut up, and watched the jet shrink under her boots before the chute opened. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and coffee, and the voices were careful. Someone said mechanical failure. Someone else said she was lucky. And after that, no one said Raven 6 because it did not exist anymore. Records moved into folders she could not see. Rank found a different line, and she took the slot to cross-train into 2W1X1 Armament. She wanted to stand next to the GAU-8, a linkless feed where truth rides on metal and timing, and she carried a quiet weight that felt like a name high in the chain who had sold them out. On the arm pad at Elridge Air Force Base, Staff Sergeant Avery Reed moves through an armament pre-flight with calm precision. Master Arm sits on safe, and she touches the guard once more to confirm. Ground safety pins are in and flagged. Tool control shows every cutout filled, and the foam tells no lies. AFTO 781 entries are updated with clean lines. Her 2W1 Armament crew owns the gun and racks, while 2A, 3 crew chiefs manage power and forms. A low-rate GAU-8, a linkless feed dry cycle BIT runs under her eyes with no live ammunition present. She watches the drum, the conveyor path, and the transfer unit for smooth motion and even sound. Cleared by procedure, the jet lifts for a short local pattern with a test pilot at the controls. Minutes later, the radio reports a gun feed fault, and the aircraft returns for safe and DE arm. On the ramp, the pilot asks who cleared the system, and the crew points to Avery as weapons sign off. She stands steady and lets the forms speak quietly. Colonel Damon Keller steps between heat ripples and keeps the chain intact with a calm voice and a measured nod. He schedules a controlled teardown for later and releases the jet to tow. As Avery resets tool control, she slides him a folded note that asks him to check the linkless conveyor pattern and says the anomaly does not match her work. He tucks it away, eyes thoughtful, and the flight line hum goes on while doubt quietly replaces certainty. Night settles over the bay, and the air smells like JP-8 and solvent. The A-10C sits cold, while aircraft power is isolated and verified by a second set of eyes. Master Arm reads, "Safe," and safety pins hang on nose and mains. Colonel Damon Keller, Chief Master Sergeant Walter Briggs, and a 2W1 Armament team move in with tool control boards and a camera to document steps. Access panels come off in order, and fasteners line up on a mat so the cutouts stay honest. The team photographs each stage from the drum to the conveyor elements, then marks forms before a glove touches metal. Keller calls out steps from the tech data while Briggs checks torque and witness marks. The bay echoes with ratchets and the click of pliers, a rhythm that keeps nerves in check. They open the transfer unit and roll the conveyor to feel for drag that should not be there. A thin ring shows where no spacer belongs, and the calipers confirm a precision insert meant to force misalignment under load. Near the drive motor, a neat splice hides in the harness. Solder that can push overcurrent into ammo drive under heat and vibration. Keller orders tags, seals parts, and ties, serials, and photos to AF Form 52 and the AFTO log. The shop settles into a hush. Containers click shut, and Keller locks them in the office safe after Briggs signs chain of custody. Tool control resets. The bay wipes down, and the lights show clean metal, while a quiet vindication for Avery shares space with a colder question about the hand that planted the spacer. No one speaks for now. The morning heat builds fast on the arm pad at Elridge Air Force Base. Major General Conrad Hale steps out of a dark sedan with a small team and asks for a demonstration on the A-10C that flagged the gun issue. The hum of the flight line is steady and close. Colonel Damon Keller keeps his voice even and nods the team into motion. Master Arm sits on safe with the guard down. Ground safety pins are installed and flagged where every eye can see them. A fire guard stands ready with extinguisher checks complete. Aircraft power is controlled and documented by the 2A-3 crew chiefs before a single panel opens. Chief Master Sergeant Walter Briggs positions the 2W1 Armament crew at stations and confirms tool control and comms. The plan is a low-rate GAU-8, a linkless feed dry cycle only. No live ammunition. No shortcuts. Keller tracks the checklist while a crew chief handles forms and coordinates tow clearance. Hale presses for tempo as if time alone will answer the question. Staff Sergeant Avery Reed stands on the safety line because she signed the weapons clearance. Her eyes move in quiet loops across exits, personnel, and the cart layout. She watches the transfer unit housing and listens without leaning in. The air smells like JP8 and hot concrete. The dry cycle spins up to the approved rate and holds. Briggs watches the drive signature while Keller confirms each call. Hale folds his arms and waits for a reason to end the pause. The room bends to rank but stays inside the book. And the pressure rises without a single unsafe move. Heat shimmers on the arm pad while a low-rate dry cycle of the GAU-8. A linkless feed begins on the A-10C. Master arm sits on safe and every pin is bright, tagged, and visible. Power is controlled at the ground test panel and a fire guard waits with checks complete. All personnel hold the safety line and the ramp hum folds into a steady backdrop. Avery stands just outside the cone of noise and watches the transfer unit housing. The vibration carries a faint off-pattern note that does not match the last clean run, followed by a brief ripple in the drive signature. She calls "cease test" in a clear voice that keeps the room calm. She isolates power, pulls the correct circuit breaker on the ground test panel, verifies pins and safe status, and only then moves to access. Panels open with screws laid out in order and tool control stays exact. Heat rolls back as she reaches the harness bundle near the drive motor and sees insulation that looks tired where it should be clean. She removes a small scorched segment at a suspicious splice so the damage can be documented and bagged. Chief Master Sergeant Walter Briggs studies the piece and says the configuration does not match the GAU-8A harness layout. Colonel Damon Keller orders a stop on all testing and calls for photos, tags, and logs before anyone touches another part. He directs evidence preservation, updates the AFDO forms, and has the section sealed for chain of custody. The flight line hum returns while the jet cools and the team writes what happened, not what anyone feels. Major General Conrad Hale calls it an overreaction and asks why the pause took so long. Keller answers that the halt likely prevented a catastrophic stoppage and possible gun bay damage. Relief slides through the line, yet unease stays behind. Sharp and quiet. The tension now comes from rank and procedure, and it points at intent rather than chance. Security forces step onto the flight line at Elridge Air Force Base with measured pace and badges. Major General Conrad Hale orders an escort for Colonel Damon Keller and Staff Sergeant Avery Reed for a debrief. And team acknowledges. They advise rights. Document the time. And keep hands visible. Engines spool, while the aircraft remains safe and chalked. Inside the weapons shop, paperwork stays where it belongs. AFDO forms remain with maintenance under the crew chief desk, not with the escort. Chief Master Sergeant Walter Briggs seals tagged components, attaches AF Form 52 to each item, and logs names, serials, and locations. He places the containers in a locked office safe and signs the chain of custody with a steady pen. Conversation drops to a murmur and boots soften on concrete. Airmen look past each other, not at the center. Keller notices the raven wrapped around the Roman numeral VI on Avery's forearm as she passes and files it away. He stays professional, asks for counsel through channels, and keeps his tone even. No one arrests the general at any point today. No cuffs, no raised voices, no gestures near an aircraft or a weapon. The pressure comes from rank, paperwork, and the gap between what happened and what people can say out loud. The room understands this is bigger than a gun fault and waits for oversight to arrive. The turn begins inside a quiet office where a secure terminal lists green checks on an upload completed at 7:15 a.m. A sealed package routes through oversight channels to the Department of Defense Inspector General and to the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. It carries flight and mission logs tied to Raven 6, maintenance photos from the GAU-8, a linkless feed teardown, AFDO form entries, and chain of custody records for a precision spacer and a harness splice. The language is dry and exact, and it asks for action. Unmarked vehicles roll through the gate at Elridge Air Force Base and pause at security forces. Agents present warrants and compare names with a calm voice that never rises. The ramp smells like JP-8 as the convoy moves to the weapons shop and the office where the safe sits. Doors open with a thud that sounds heavier than it is. Inside, AFOSI and DoD IG take custody of sealed containers that carry AF Form 52 tags on every part. Serial numbers are cross-checked against photos and CCTV, then matched to tool crib logs to confirm who accessed what and when. Interviews begin in sequence and in private rooms that feel like waiting areas more than theaters. The process is patient, and it does not hurry to catch up with anyone's nerves. A signed warrant ends the question of posture and rank for Major General Conrad Hale, and the detention happens without a raised hand. Colonel Damon Keller provides statements with counsel present and sticks to procedure and facts. Staff Sergeant Avery Reed remains quiet and professional, while investigators confirm the steps that led from inspection to stop to evidence. Relief does not celebrate on the floor, but it settles in the way people breathe, while the room answers to process instead of pressure. Federal agents finish interviews in quiet rooms that smell like paper and coffee. The last signatures go down on charging documents for conspiracy and falsifying combat records against Major General Conrad Hale and selected staff. Files move through legal channels without drama. The base returns to a steady rhythm while people speak in low voices and get back to work. In the weeks that follow, Raven 6 appears in the USAF archives with names restored and dates corrected. Staff Sergeant Avery Reed receives reinstatement orders that name her Major Avery Reed. There is no ceremony. She signs, declines commendations, and asks only for a memorial that lists every pilot who did not come home. The dedication takes place behind Hangar 2 on a clear morning with a light wind across concrete. A granite wall carries 6 names under the simple heading Raven 6, while an A-10C idles far off like a calm heartbeat. Colonel Damon Keller stands beside Chief Master Sergeant Walter Briggs, and neither man speaks. A small Raven marking rests beneath an A-10C cockpit nearby. A plain morale symbol added by a painter with a steady hand, and not a claim of anything official. The moment feels earned, and the field sounds honest again. The flight line at Elridge Air Force Base sits in a calm morning hush while a C-17 waits, with engines humming at idle. Ground crew move with easy rhythm. Chocks firm. Marshaller wands bright. A headset tech listening for the smallest change in tone. A loadmaster checks the manifest and watches the ramp for strays. Heat lifts off the concrete and carries the clean smell of JP-8. Colonel Damon Keller walks up with a steady gait. Cover set just right. And eyes that have logged too many long days. Major Avery Reed stands easy at the edge of the safety cone with gloves tucked at her belt, both of them leaving big words alone. They speak like professionals who have carried weight without headlines. The talk is short, and it lands where it should. She tells him that loud people get noticed, but quiet people get things done. Keller returns the thought with a nod that holds respect more than noise. They trade a proper salute, crisp and even, then lower their hands in the same beat. The sun lifts over the wings and turns the fuselage a soft white, and an A-10C nearby shows a small Raven marking beneath the cockpit. A plain morale touch and nothing official. At 7:30 a.m., the loadmaster signals ready and the ramp closes with a measured thunk. The marshaller steps aside and the big jet begins to roll. Slow at first, then sure. Keller watches without moving, then turns toward the work that still waits. The message stays behind on the concrete, quiet and solid. The kind that people remember without needing to say it twice. Truth moves when evidence moves. We watched it travel through forms, photos, serials, and steady hands until the noise fell away. Discipline kept people safe and protected the jet. From the first pin to the last signature, quiet professionals carried the mission with no spotlight. And the work spoke clearly enough. Picture the granite wall behind Hangar 2 with Raven 6 cut into stone. Edges clean and cold. Far across the ramp, an A-10C taxis at idle. Steady lights and a small raven painted beneath the cockpit. A simple morale touch. The low rumble rolls through the concrete like a slow drum. You can feel the bass take a breath and settle back into its rhythm. If this story earned your time, add a like, share it with someone who respects the craft, and subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. We can walk through the GAU-8, a linkless feed in plain language, and show how rounds move without a belt. Step by step and safe. We can also spend a day with quiet Air Force jobs that rarely headline. The armament crews who keep weapons honest. The crew chiefs who own the jet on the ground. And the avionics techs who chase gremlins. This channel stands for respect, accuracy, and the people who make aircraft ready.